Hi everyone, welcome to Azad Revenge Stories channel. Get your things, Marlowe. I need your badge and laptop before you leave. I just stood there frozen, staring at him across his stupid mahogany desk with the little Christmas tree in the corner twinkling like everything was normal. My hands were shaking. 12 years. 12 years I'd given to this company. And Grayson Caldwell couldn't even look me in the eye while he fired me on Christmas Eve. I don't understand. I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. The quarterly numbers were the best we've had in 5 years. The client retention rate is. It's not about performance. He cut me off, finally looking up from his computer. The company's downsizing. Your position's been eliminated. HR prepared your severance package. He slid a manila folder across the desk. Security will escort you out on Christmas Eve. Are you serious right now? I could feel the heat rising in my face, tears threatening, but I refused to let him see me break. What about my team? What about the Western account? I just landed. Kiara will be taking over your accounts. He glanced at his watch. I have a call in 10 minutes, Marlowe. Security is waiting. Kiara, of course. His 28-year-old protege, who'd been with the company for all of 8 months. The one he'd been parading around executive meetings, interrupting me to ask for her opinion. The one whose ideas were mysteriously similar to ones I'd pitched weeks earlier in private emails to Grayson. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I picked up the manila envelope, placed my badge on his desk, and turned toward the door. Marlowe, he called after me. I paused but didn't turn around. Happy holidays. I swear I could hear the smirk in his voice. That was 6 months ago. My name is Marlowe Chen. I'm 42 years old, and I'm about to tell you how I systematically dismantled the life and career of the man who thought he could throw me away like yesterday's trash. But before I go deeper into this, if you're new here, please like this video and hit subscribe. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. So there I was, standing in the parking garage with a box of my belongings, watching the security guard walk back toward the elevator. 12 years of my life reduced to a sad little cardboard box and a manila envelope with a severance agreement that I hadn't even looked at yet. I sat in my car and screamed, just screamed until my throat hurt. Then I cried until I couldn't breathe. When I finally composed myself enough to drive, I noticed Grayson's reserved parking spot empty. Of course, the coward had probably slipped out early for his family's annual Christmas trip to Aspen, leaving the dirty work of watching me pack up my desk to security. I should tell you that I'm not someone who falls apart easily. My parents immigrated here with nothing, worked double shifts so I could go to college. Steady, strategic, reliable. That's how people described me. At work, they called me the fixer because I could solve any crisis without drama. But sitting there in that cold car, I felt something break inside me. I drove home to my empty apartment. No Christmas decorations. I'd been too busy at work to bother. My boyfriend, Ethan, had ended things 3 months prior, claiming I was emotionally unavailable and married to my job. The irony wasn't lost on me. I opened the severance package, 2 months' pay after 12 years, and a non-disclosure agreement that would prevent me from saying anything negative about the company or its leadership. There was also a letter explaining that my health insurance would end in 30 days. Perfect timing. I'd scheduled a surgery for a fibroid issue for the following month. The surgery I'd been putting off for 2 years because I was always too busy with work emergencies. Grayson knew about this. I discussed my medical leave with him just 2 weeks earlier. I reached for my laptop, the personal one, not the company one they'd taken. I was too numb to even think about job hunting. Instead, I found myself clicking through folders of old work documents I'd backed up over the years, just routine stuff, project notes, presentation drafts, meeting minutes. But then I remembered something. 3 years ago, there had been an issue with the company's servers, and it had asked us to back up important files on our personal drives temporarily. Most people deleted those backups afterward. I never did. I was always meticulous about records. As I scrolled through those files, I found a folder labeled Juicy, Private. Copies of emails and documents I'd saved for Grayson during that server migration. I'd forgotten they were even there. I opened the folder, not really looking for anything specific, just trying to distract myself from the hollow feeling in my chest. But what I found made my stomach drop. Emails, dozens of them, between Grayson and the CFO about the company's accounting practices, about moving money between accounts to clean up the books before investor meetings, about creative solutions to revenue shortfalls. I'm not an accountant, but even I could see this wasn't just aggressive bookkeeping. This was fraud. And there was more emails about covering up a sexual harassment settlement, communications about knowingly using materials from a supplier that had failed safety tests. I sat there for hours reading through everything. The more I read, the clearer it became. Grayson Caldwell wasn't just an arrogant, backstabbing boss. He was a criminal, and I had proof. That night, something changed in me. The hurt and shock began hardening into something else, something cold and focused. I didn't want justice. I wanted revenge. But Grayson wasn't some random middle manager. He was the golden boy CEO of a company valued at over $2 billion. He had connections in the industry, in politics, in the media. He had resources I couldn't even imagine. Going against him directly would be suicide. So I did what I always did at work. I made a plan, a careful, detailed, methodical plan. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was looking at. I spent the next 2 weeks studying those files, researching corporate law, and consulting anonymously with an online financial forum about what certain transactions might indicate. I created a secure email account and reached out to a forensic accountant, sending redacted versions of some documents to confirm my suspicions. The response what I had was evidence of securities fraud, tax evasion, and possibly money laundering, the kind of stuff that could lead to federal charges. My first instinct was to go to the authorities, but then I remembered what happened to Natalie Winters. She was a whistleblower at another major company 3 years ago. She did everything right, went through proper channels, had solid evidence, and she was destroyed. The company's legal team painted her as a disgruntled, unstable employee. They dug into her personal life, her dating history, her therapy records. She ended up unemployable, financially ruined, and her case was eventually dismissed on a technicality. No, going to the authorities wouldn't work. Not yet. Not without protection. I needed leverage. And for that, I needed more information. Information that wasn't in my files. That's when I thought of Darius. He'd been the head of IT security at the company until he left last year. We weren't close friends, but we'd always had a good professional relationship. I reached out, suggested meeting for coffee, catching up. When we met, I was careful. I didn't mention the files or my suspicions. I just talked about being unexpectedly let go, asked how he was doing at his new job. Then I casually asked if he heard anything about the company's financial situation. Darius looked uncomfortable. Look, Marlowe, I left for a reason. That place is toxic. And Grayson, let's just say there were things I wasn't comfortable being associated with. That was my opening. I leaned in and lowered my voice. What kinds of things? He hesitated, then said, I can't really talk about it, but if you were let go suddenly despite your performance, maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Some ships are better to get off of before they sink. I took a chance. Darius, what if I told you I might have evidence of what Grayson's been doing? Financial irregularities, cover-ups. His eyes widened slightly. He glanced around the coffee shop, then back at me. I'd say be very, very careful. People who get in Grayson's way tend to have problems. What if I need help understanding some technical aspects of what I found? He was silent for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, opened a new contact page, and passed it to me. Create a Signal account. Message me there, not by text, not by email. And Marlowe, delete your browsing history after you install it. That conversation confirmed what I already suspected. I wasn't dealing with just unethical behavior, but potentially dangerous people. I needed to be smarter, more strategic. Over the next month, I built my case meticulously. With Darius's help, I identified which servers would contain the complete communication records. I learned about the offshore accounts Grayson had set up. I discovered that the new acquisition the company had announced, the one that had boosted the stock price by 30%, was based on completely fabricated revenue projections. I also learned that I wasn't the only one Grayson had pushed out. There had been others, people who might have noticed discrepancies, asked too many questions. Some had been fired, others sidelined into meaningless roles until they quit. But information alone wasn't enough. I needed a plan for how to use it. If I'm being honest, there were moments during this time when I considered just walking away, finding a new job, moving to a new city, starting over, the smart, safe choice. But then I'd remember Grayson's smug face saying happy holidays as he departed 12 years of my life. I'd think about how he knew about my surgery and timed my firing so my insurance would run out. I'd think about how he was probably grooming Kiara the same way he'd once groomed me, as a workhorse he could use up and discard. I couldn't walk away, not just for me, but for everyone else he'd hurt, everyone else he would hurt. So I refined my plan. If I went directly to authorities, Grayson would unleash his legal team. They'd bury me in litigation, question my credibility, maybe even argue I had stolen company property. He'd know it was me, and he'd come after me with everything he had. No, I needed to be invisible. I needed to create a situation where the evidence would speak for itself, where multiple parties would receive it simultaneously, where Grayson wouldn't know where the attack was coming from until it was too late. And, most importantly, I needed protection. Someone powerful enough to shield me from the fallout. That's when I thought of Imani Reynolds. She was a journalist known for breaking stories about corporate corruption. She had sources everywhere and a reputation for protecting whistleblowers. She also had a personal reason to be interested. One of the companies Grayson had fraudulently acquired was founded by her cousin. I spent days crafting an email to her, vague enough to protect myself but specific enough to get her attention. I sent it from an anonymous account using a VPN. She responded within hours. Interested. Need more details. Can you provide proof? I sent her 3 documents, just enough to show I was legitimate, not enough to reveal the full scope. We arranged to meet in person at a public place 2 weeks later. Those 2 weeks were the most stressful of my life. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, checking my accounts for suspicious activity, sleeping with my documents in a fireproof safe beside my bed. I don't think I slept more than 3 hours at a stretch. The day before our meeting, Imani messaged me, "Bring everything tomorrow. I have someone from the Financial Crimes Division who wants to talk." I felt a surge of hope. This might actually work. I might actually bring Grayson down. That night, I was organizing my files when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, Marlowe. Last warning." My blood ran cold. Someone knew. Somehow they knew. I stared at my phone, panic rising in my throat. "Stop digging, Marlowe. Last warning." My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. How could they know what I was doing? I'd been so careful. The only person who knew was Darius, and I trusted him. Unless they were watching me already, unless my meeting with Darius had been noticed, unless someone had accessed my personal computer somehow. I grabbed my laptop and threw it in a bag along with the external hard drive containing my evidence. I checked the locks on my doors and windows twice. I even looked under my car before getting in the next morning, paranoid about tracking devices or worse. The meeting with Imani was set for noon at a busy restaurant downtown. I arrived an hour early, sat at a table with my back to the wall, and watched everyone who came through the door. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. Imani arrived exactly on time. She was shorter than I expected, but had this commanding presence that made people notice her. She slid into the seat across from me without introducing herself. "You look like you haven't slept," she said, studying my face. "I got a warning text last night." I told her. "Someone knows I'm talking to you." She didn't seem surprised. That was fast. Usually takes them longer to catch wind. She ordered coffee for both of us, then leaned forward. "Tell me why you're really doing this, Marlowe, and don't give me the righteous whistleblower speech. I need the truth." The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on the mechanics of taking Grayson down that I hadn't really examined my own motives in a while. "He destroyed something in me," I finally said. "Not just the job. He took my sense of security, my confidence, my trust in people. I gave that company everything. Missed family funerals, worked through pneumonia, ended relationships because I was so dedicated, and he threw me away like I was nothing, like those 12 years meant nothing. I realized I was gripping my water glass so tightly my knuckles were white. But it's not just about me, I continued. It's about every person he stepped on to get where he is. It's about the investors he's defrauding. It's about my replacement, who doesn't realize she's just another disposable resource to him. He's hurt so many people, and he's going to keep doing it unless someone stops him. Imani studied me for a long moment, then nodded. That's what I needed to hear. Now where's this evidence you promised? I reached into my bag for the external hard drive, but as I did, something made me glance toward the entrance. My blood turned to ice. Chiara had just walked in. Grayson's protege, my replacement. She was scanning the restaurant like she was looking for someone. We need to leave now, I whispered to Imani. The woman who replaced me just walked in. This isn't a coincidence. Imani didn't argue. She dropped cash on the table, and we slipped out the side entrance just as Chiara spotted our table. In the alley behind the restaurant, Imani grabbed my arm. My car's around the corner. Come with me. We need to move quickly. I followed her to a nondescript sedan. As we pulled away, I saw Chiara emerge from the restaurant, looking around frantically. How did they know? I asked, my voice shaking. I was so careful. Corporate espionage is an amateur hour, Amarni said, checking her rear-view mirror. These people have resources. They might have been monitoring my communications, not yours. Or maybe your friend in it isn't as trustworthy as you thought. The thought that Darius might have betrayed me made me feel physically ill, but I couldn't focus on that now. Where are we going? I asked. Somewhere safe to review what you've got. If it's as significant as you say, we need to move fast. They are clearly on to us. Hey, if you're still with me on this wild ride, do me a quick favor and hit that like button. I know this story seems crazy, but I swear every word is true, and it only gets more intense from here. Imani took me to a small office in a converted warehouse. Inside, a man was waiting, tall, serious, with the unmistakable demeanor of law enforcement. This is Agent Carson, Imani said. He's with the Financial Crimes Division of the FBI, and he's been investigating your former company for the past 8 months. I felt a surge of hope. So, you already know about the fraud, the offshore accounts. We have suspicions, Agent Carson said. What we don't have is evidence. Your company's security systems are sophisticated, and Caldwell is careful. He doesn't put anything incriminating in writing if he can help it. Except he did, I said, pulling out my external drive 3 years ago during a server migration. He didn't realize I kept copies. For the next several hours, we went through my evidence. I explained each document, each email thread, connecting dots that might not be obvious to outsiders. Agent Carson's expression grew, increasingly grim. This is exactly what we needed, he finally said. But it's also extremely dangerous information. The text you received confirms they know you have something. Your life could be in danger. What do we do? I asked. We move you to a safe location while we prepare to move on this. He said Reynolds will break the story simultaneously with our enforcement action, which should happen within 72 hours. The coordination is crucial. We need to prevent evidence from being destroyed. And what about me? I asked. What happens to me when this is over? Agent Carson and Amarni exchanged looks. Best case scenario, you're a hero, Imani said. Worst case, you're radioactive in your industry, possibly facing countersuits from the company for violating your NDA and dealing with online harassment from trolls who think you're trying to bring down a successful company out of spite. So basically, my life is over either way, I said quietly. Not necessarily. Agent Carson said the Whistleblower Protection Act could provide some safeguards, and with Miss Gaiman's Reynolds publicizing your role as a whistleblower rather than a disgruntled employee, the public narrative could be controlled. I thought about it. Going back to my apartment wasn't safe. Continuing with my normal life wasn't an option, but hiding in witness protection, or whatever the FBI was offering, felt like another kind of prison. I need some air, I said, standing up. Just 5 minutes to think. They let me step outside into a small courtyard behind the building. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the pavement. I took deep breaths, trying to clear my head. That's when I realized what felt wrong about the whole situation. If Grayson knew I had evidence, why just send a warning text? Why not break into my apartment and take it? Why send Kiara to the restaurant instead of confronting me directly? Because he wasn't sure. He suspected, but he didn't know exactly why I had or what I planned to do with it. And now I was about to hand everything over to the authorities, essentially removing myself from the equation. I would get justice maybe, but not satisfaction, not the reckoning I wanted. Grayson would face legal consequences, but he would never have to face me. He would never have to acknowledge what he did to me personally. I went back inside with a new resolve and a new plan forming in my mind. I'm not hiding, I told them. I want to be there when he goes down. I want to see his face. They argued with me, of course. Said it was too risky, that I could compromise the investigation, but I was adamant. Either I'm part of this or I walk out right now with my evidence. I said, your call. Eventually, we reached a compromise. I would stay in a safe location of their choosing for 48 hours while they prepared their case. Then I would return to work, not at my old company, but at a partner firm where I had connections. I would act normal, going about my business while wearing a wire to gather any additional evidence. If Grayson or his people approached me, the FBI would move in during the company's quarterly board meeting where all the key players would be present. Imani would publish her expose simultaneously, and I would be there watching it all unfold. The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. Agent Carson's team made copies of all my evidence and had me record a detailed statement. Imani worked on her story, checking facts, preparing for publication. I practiced acting normal, rehearsed what I would say if confronted. On the morning of the board meeting, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. Whatever happened today, my life would never be the same again. But for the first time in 6 months, I felt like I was taking back control. I dressed carefully. A charcoal gray suit I'd bought with my first executive bonus. A silk blouse in deep red heels that made me stand tall. Armor for battle. The wire was discreetly attached under my clothing, virtually undetectable. My role was simple. I had a meeting scheduled at a consulting firm in the same building as my former company. A legitimate meeting about a potential job. I would arrive early, position myself in the lobby coffee shop with clear sight lines to the elevator bank that served the executive floor. I would watch and wait. I arrived at 9:30 a.m. The board meeting was scheduled for 10:00. I ordered coffee and pretended to review documents while scanning every person who entered the building. At 9:45, a familiar figure walked through the revolving doors. Grayson. He looked exactly the same. Expensive suit, confident stride, that smile that never quite reached his eyes. My stomach clenched at the sight of him, but I forced myself to stay calm. He didn't notice me, heading straight for the express elevator. As the doors closed behind him, I felt a mix of disappointment and relief. Part of me had wanted him to see me, to know what was coming, but it was better this way, more satisfying to imagine his shock when it all came crashing down. At precisely 10:15, according to the plan, I saw the first sign that things were happening. A group of serious-looking men and women in suits exited the same elevator, accompanied by building security. FBI agents headed to the executive floor. My heart started racing. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Amarni. Story just went live. All major outlets picking it up. It's happening. I pulled up a news site on my tablet. There it was. The headline. Exclusive. CEO Grayson Caldwell implicated in massive financial fraud scheme. The article detailed everything. The accounting fraud, the cover-ups, the offshore accounts. My name was mentioned as a whistleblower who had courageously come forward with evidence. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number, I answered cautiously. Marlowe, it's Darius. Are you watching this? It's all over the news. I know, I said, still not sure if I could trust him. Did you tell them about me, Darius? About what I was doing? But no, I would never. He paused. Wait, you think I betrayed you? Marlowe, I've been helping the FBI for months. I'm the one who told them you might have valuable information. I'm the reason Agent Carson was already investigating when you came forward." I felt a wave of relief. Then who sent me that warning text? Probably someone in it monitoring communication patterns. "Look, where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm in the lobby of Grayson's building," I said, watching it all go down. He was silent for a moment. "You're either the bravest or craziest person I know. Stay there. I'm coming to you." I hung up and returned my attention to the elevator bank. For the next 30 minutes there was frantic activity. Security personnel rushing up, more FBI agents arriving, building management looking concerned. Then at 11:00 a.m. the express elevator doors opened, and there he was, Grayson, flanked by 2 FBI agents, being led out in handcuffs. He looked shell-shocked, his perfect composure completely shattered. His eyes darted around wildly, and that's when he saw me sitting there calmly watching him, a slight smile on my face. Our eyes locked. Recognition dawned on his face, followed by disbelief, then fury. He actually tried to lunge toward me, but the agents held him firmly. "You," he spat. "You did this to me?" I stood up slowly, gathered my things, and walked over to stand directly in front of him. The agents tensed, but didn't interfere. "No, Grayson," I said quietly so only he could hear. "You did this to yourself. I just made sure you couldn't do it to anyone else." His face contorted with rage. "You're finished. You'll never work in this industry again. My lawyers will. Your lawyers will be too busy defending you from federal charges to worry about me." I cut him off. "Besides, I've already accepted a new position, Chief Compliance Officer at your company's biggest competitor. They were very interested in my insights about preventing the kind of fraud you specialized in." It was true. During those 48 hours in the safe house, I'd received 3 job offers from companies eager to demonstrate their commitment to ethical practices in the wake of what would soon be a major industry scandal. "Why?" he asked, his voice suddenly smaller. "Why did you do this?" "I gave you a generous severance package." "I didn't have to do that." I leaned closer. "You fired me on Christmas Eve. You timed it so my health insurance would run out before my surgery. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you did it with a smile. Happy holidays." "Remember." The agents started to move him toward the exit. As they did, I called after him. "By the way, I hear federal prison doesn't have reserved parking spaces. You might want to get used to that." I watched as they loaded him into an unmarked car outside. Only when the car pulled away did I finally let myself feel the full impact of what had just happened. My legs nearly gave out, and I sank onto a bench in the lobby. That's when Darius found me. He sat down beside me, not speaking, just offering his presence as I processed everything. "Is it over?" I finally asked. "For Grayson, yes. For the company, probably not. There will be investigations, lawsuits, possibly a complete restructuring, but the truth is out there now. You did that. What happens to everyone who works there? All those people who had nothing to do with his schemes. Most will be fine. Companies survive scandals all the time, but they'll be better off without Grayson steering the ship into an iceberg." We sat in silence for a few more minutes. "What about you?" he eventually asked. "What happens to Marlo Chen now?" I thought about it. For so long, my entire focus had been on bringing Grayson down. I hadn't really considered what came after. "I start over," I said. "Take one of these job offers. Focus on building something positive instead of tearing something down. Maybe finally schedule that surgery I've been putting off." "Sounds like a plan," Darius said. He hesitated, then added, "Maybe have dinner with me sometime when the dust settles." I smiled, the first genuine smile in months. "I'd like that." As we walked out of the building together, my phone buzzed again. Another news alert. Breaking. Grayson Caldwell arrested on multiple fraud charges. Faces up to 30 years in prison. Justice finally. So that's my story. From dedicated employee to unemployed whistleblower to watching my former boss being led away in handcuffs. It's been 6 months since that day. Grayson is awaiting trial, most of his assets frozen. The company has new leadership and strict oversight. I'm at my new job implementing compliance systems that would have prevented what Grayson did. And yes, Darius and I are still having dinner. Turns out revenge isn't the only dish best served with good company. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. I don't usually share such personal experiences, but I wanted people to know that sometimes standing up for yourself means standing up for everyone else who might become a victim. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, let me know in the comments. Maybe your story can help someone else find their strength too. Remember, powerful people aren't untouchable. Sometimes, all it takes is one person brave enough or angry enough to bring the whole house of cards tumbling down. I invite you to subscribe to the Azad Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and support me further by hitting the hype button so the story in this video can be heard by many more people. Thanks to all.